These days, with seemingly infinite access to musicians' lives through social media and entertainment journalism, and an extensive history of music at our fingertips thanks to the internet, it's difficult to conceive of questions to which we don't have answers. Surely solving a music mystery is just as easy as searching for long enough online, but the reality is very different. For a start, there are musicians who reject social media and entertainment journalism, choosing to try and retain a sense of privacy. Not only that, but the internet is still fairly recent, and it was much tougher to keep tabs on everything before the noughties. For this reason, the music industry is permeated with unanswered questions dealing with everything from murder to the precise meaning of certain music videos. That's not to mention the people who've gone missing and the pieces of music we've supposedly lost. So with that in mind, I'm Will for WhatCulture, and here are the 8 biggest unsolved mysteries in music. Number 8. Did someone kill Bobby Fuller? Bobby Fuller was an American rock singer and guitarist who was prolific in the 60s. In 1964, he moved to Los Angeles with his band The Bobby Fuller 4 and was signed to Mustang Records. There, he recorded several hits, including Let Her Dance, Love's Made a Fool of You, and probably most famously, I Fought the Law. Within months of I Fought the Law becoming a top 10 hit, however, tragedy struck. Fuller was found dead in a car parked outside his apartment in Hollywood. The subsequent autopsy presented more questions than it answered. Fuller's entire body was covered in hemorrhages, which are purplish spots on the skin caused by broken capillary blood vessels, likely caused by gasoline vapors. No other discernible injury was discovered, yet the sections for the accident and suicide on the autopsy report were both ticked with question marks scrawled beside them. In the end, there was never any conclusive timeline of events, and many believe that Fuller was actually murdered. Jim Reese, one of the band members of the Bobby Fuller 4, actually stated that he believed Charles Manson may have been involved. Number 7. Where is the missing Sibelius Symphony? Unless you're a bit of a classical music aficionado, you may not know who Gene Sibelius is, but rest assured he remains one of the world's most famous composers. Born in Finland, he's considered to be the country's greatest composer and is praised for helping the country develop a strong national identity. Until Finland adopted the euro as currency, his portrait was featured on the 100 mark note. Sibelius was born in 1865 and composed prolifically until the mid-1920s, when he stopped publishing and performing his work. This sudden decline was so stunning that it actually merited a title, The Silence of Järvenpää, a reference to the location of his home. Yet during this time, Sibelius was writing. Specifically, he was working on an 8th symphony, a piece he worked on for over a decade. When he died in 1957, it was asserted that he had destroyed this symphony, stunning critics and scholars around the world. Yet in the 1990s, scholars who were cataloguing the composer's notebooks and sketches began to realize they had found fragments of the piece, and that it likely wasn't completely destroyed, but exists through various other records. The belief is that it should be possible to reconstruct the entire work if further fragments can be identified, but where those fragments might be located, nobody really knows. Number 6. Did Jack White provide vocals for Electric Six's Danger, High Voltage? Danger High Voltage is one of the few songs Electric Six managed to usher into the world before dropping off the face of the mainstream forever, the other being Gay Bar. Nevertheless, the band never stopped writing and touring, having released a total of 11 studio albums over the course of their career. But back to Danger High Voltage. When it was released as a single in 2002 from the album Fire, it took the radio by storm and was received fairly well by critics. But it spawned one mystery that has never been conclusively solved. Many believe that Jack White of the White Stripes provided secondary lead vocals on the track, yet the band insists the singer was an auto mechanic named John S. O'Leary. Despite several contrary reports, the band's drummer at the time, M, repeatedly dodged questioning by saying, "My attorney has advised us to neither confirm nor deny the presence of Jack White." While it's entirely likely White was involved, the truth remains obscure and therefore remains a mystery. Number 5. Who kills the notorious B.I.G? Christopher Wallace, better known for his stage names the Notorious B.I.G. or Biggie Smalls, is one of the most influential hip-hop musicians who ever lived. His 1994 studio debut, Ready to Die, was released to critical acclaim and great commercial success, and is considered one of the best albums of all time. Short of Tupac, Biggie Smalls' death is easily the most talked about in hip-hop, a tragedy that took place on the 9th of March, 1997. Smalls was the victim of a drive-by shooting in LA and died within an hour of the attack. The whole case is a tangled mess of speculation and accusation, with many attempting to connect Smalls' murder to Tupac's, as he was also killed in a drive-by. Despite a composite sketch of a suspect and a number of investigative studies, documentaries and books, the murder of Christopher Wallace remains completely unsolved. Number 4 was Jim Morrison's body moved. Jim Morrison is one of the most iconic and influential frontmen in rock history. He's best remembered as the lead singer of the American rock band The Doors, and his influence has permeated the industry for decades. Morrison's death, however, remains a point of contention amongst fans and critics. There are several pertinent questions surrounding the singer's death, not least of all the actual cause. Despite the fact that a large amount of heroin was found in his system, no autopsy was ever performed, and so the exact cause of Morrison's death was never determined. Fueling the mystery even further, in the mid-2000s, one of Morrison's longtime acquaintances, Sam Bennett, claimed that Morrison actually passed away in the restroom of a Paris club called the Rock and Roll Circus. Morrison was supposedly determined by a physician at the club to have died of an overdose, but in order to keep the police away from the scene, Morrison's body was moved to the bathtub in his apartment. How exactly Jim Morrison died and where exactly he died remains an unanswered question. Number 3. Who killed Peter IVERS? Peter IVERS was an American musician popular in the 70s and 80s. Born in Illinois but raised in Boston, he studied classical languages at university before pursuing a career in music. One of IVERS' greatest claims to fame is that he was asked by David Lynch to write a song for Eraserhead, which he did, In Heaven, the Lady in the Radiator song. The composition became the most well-known in the film. In 1983, however, IVERS was tragically murdered in his Los Angeles apartment, bludgeoned to death with a hammer. Upon news of the crime, many of IVERS' Hollywood friends gathered at his apartment, much to the distress of authorities who failed to cordon off the crime scene. Whether or not this gathering destroyed or disrupted crucial evidence isn't really known, but what is known is that the police never managed to identify the murderer or pinpoint a solid suspect. In 2008, a posthumous IVERS album was released, K2B2 Records, The Untold Stories. Over 25 years later, and the mystery still remains unsolved. Number 2. Why is the guy in Radiohead's Just music video lying on the ground? Just was released in 1995 from Radiohead's second album, The Bends. The whole thing seemed fairly cut and dry in the context of the album, but the video for the song created a music mystery that remains unsolved to this very day. In the video, a well-dressed man bathes, leaves his house, walks down the street, and then lies down on the ground. As the narrative progresses, various people encounter the man, asking why he's lying there and whether or not he needs help. Gradually, a massive crowd forms, and the man tells everyone to leave him alone. It's intriguing stuff, made all the more so by his repeated refusal to relent, saying things like, "You don't want to know, please believe me." Eventually, the man does, however, and the video's subtitles disappear. We see his mouth moving, and then in the next scene, the whole crowd is lying on the ground too. So, what did he say? It's something music fans have been trying to figure out for years. Number 1. Was Beethoven poisoned? Ludwig van Beethoven is one of the most influential composers of all time, a man whose legacy has lasted for over 2 centuries and will continue to do so indefinitely. His symphonies, sonatas and concertos are celebrated and studied to this very day. Given how long ago he lived, however, Beethoven was born in 1770, there are still many things we don't entirely know about his life, or for that matter, his death. For years now, there has been a prolonged debate over how exactly the man died. An autopsy revealed extensive liver damage which was possibly caused by excessive alcohol consumption, but a whole range of other causes have been put forward with some legitimacy. Syphilis, hepatitis and Whipple's disease, to name a few. More recently, however, Beethoven's hair has been studied. Following his death, several friends clipped locks of his hair to keep as a memorial, which has led to several controversial assertions that he was poisoned to death by extreme doses of lead-based treatments by his doctor. And there you have it, folks, the 8 biggest unsolved mysteries in music. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and give me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDogU. I'm Will for WhatCulture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.